The future of tech is being driven by AI, with quantum potentially the next big thing. We have innovation zones and AI growth zones cropping up with data centers and supercomputers at their core. These are high energy consuming technologies, and so the need for sustainable tech businesses is greater than ever. Ruth, you're our sector lead on sustainable tech and tech for good. How do you see the market at the moment?
I think that's a really interesting point. There's a real juxtaposition at the moment between there's a high growth in green tech businesses driven by a number of things, regulation, the consumer drive, so the societal need to build a world that is better, more sustainable, will last longer, investment opportunities. We're seeing this constant drive, as well as the technological advances, so AI, all enable more and more green tech and growth in green tech businesses. We've seen and we are seeing growth in this area. There's been a compound annual growth rate of 23.1% anticipated between 2025 to 2030. We're expecting across the whole of the globe that it'll reach a level of nearly $80 billion. In the UK itself, we're seeing growth over the past 3 years of up to 3 times, tracking 3 times higher than the rest of the economy. There's real opportunity out there for sustainable businesses, sustainable technology businesses, and the opportunities both for the businesses themselves and investment are out there and ripe at the moment to capitalise on those opportunities.
There seems like significant potential there. What are the challenges facing the sustainable tech and green tech businesses?
That's a really interesting question, because I think, we've talked about all of these opportunities. There's so much growth, revenue growth out there. But time and again, what we're hearing from tech businesses, particularly sustainable tech businesses, is that they're struggling to find the funding and the development opportunities. These businesses, particularly when they're innovative and growing, require a level of development and investment into them in order to be able to fund that research, to fund that innovation. And they're struggling at the moment to make those opportunities available to them because they just can't find the right funding at the right time.
Given the potential of the market, you'd expect there to be investment opportunities. What is there available for sustainable tech businesses?
There are a number of opportunities that are out there. We see government funding, whether it's specific green funding that's available through the government in the UK or business funding that's available through the business bank. There is R&D tax credits. They've been used a lot, sometimes for good, which enable businesses where they have a research and development purpose to get tax relief associated to that cost that they're spending in it. And then you also see sort of, the more traditional type of funding and investment. So you have debt financing, whether that's some sort of invoice discounting if you're at a later stage, or whether it's traditional overdraft funding from the banks. And then equity investment, so investment from investors, third-party investors, sometimes not third-party investors, into the business itself.
That really strikes a chord. The research and development point is key to me as an IP lawyer, and patent box relief as well. So what different types of investment are out there for the different types of businesses?
So what we see typically is that in order to create a sustainable business and a business that is structured in order to grow, businesses and founders and entrepreneurs need to look at getting a range of different types of investment throughout their life cycle, but also in different bits of the life cycle. So you'll often see that there's a balance of debt finance, government funding, and also equity investment. And then the investment itself differs through the different stages of business, so from startup through to scale up, from scale up through your various series, so series A, B, C, so on, and then also potentially an eventual listing or exit, and who invests at those different stages and why they invest differs. And what I would say one of the key priorities that a business, when they're going through this journey, should look to do is to take that moment to look up above the parapet. It's really, really easy to get yourself caught up in the weeds of the day-to-day job. But in order to make sure that you've got that plan out there, you need to look at what funding you need now, but also forecasting forward for what your growth plans, what your aspirations are. And then do the diligence. There are different investors along the way. You have the angel investors that often are a bit more open to a high risk opportunity, all the way through to more institutional investors that expect a more established business. Their risk appetite is lower, but they potentially have greater funds as a consequence. Depending on what stage you're at, there are other tax reliefs, so SEIS, EIS, VCT, which make investment more attractive to individuals and to businesses at that early stage. You need to understand where you are, what's available to you, and what you need. Do your diligence, not just about what funding you need, but also who you're getting that funding in from. Look at what funding they have available. Look at who they are. Look at what other businesses they've invested in. There are a number of funders out there at the moment that claim green investment funds. Make sure that they actually align with your values and culture. Make sure that what they look to give you is what you need. Make sure they've got the funding available, the ready available resources to deliver what you need to deliver. You'll always need more money, but if you can try to make sure you're planning that as far forward as possible, it helps with the bumps and evens them out along the way. There's definitely opportunities out there though.
Well, I think there's a number of points there. You mentioned the companies doing due diligence into their investors, and actually they should probably be thinking about due diligence into themselves, because that's what the investors will be doing. So making sure they've got everything in place that they need. I mean, the very basics is ensuring they know their ESG metrics, you know, their carbon reduction per unit sold, for example, and also that they've got credible certifications to back up their claims. So things like B Corp, the international standards, those types of certifications will make them stand out and give them that credibility. They also need to ensure that they have an adaptable technology that's cross-sector and scalable. That's the sort of thing that will make them more attractive to investors, so they're not just pigeonholed in one area. But more importantly, from a due diligence point of view, just to make sure they've got everything that protects their business. So they've done appropriate IP audits to ensure what IP they've got and where they can get registered protection. They've got registered protections in place. Make sure they own all their rights as well, which is crucial. They also need to make sure their contractual positions are clear with any third parties and with their customers. Investors are going to want to see strong contractual documentation which supports the investment that they're going to be putting into these companies. And making sure they're compliant with the regulations. Those are the big risks that investors are going to want to avoid. And so you've got the environmental regulations. They're going to be key. If you're utilising AI, then you're going to need to consider the various AI acts that are around in the UK and in the EU, and making sure you've got compliance with those. Most of those have a year or so to go before you need to be compliant with them, but you need to make sure you are ahead of the curve if you want to attract that investment, to show that you are ready and that you will tackle the risks that are coming your way.
So we've talked about AI a couple of times already. Looking at that, how can AI businesses also be green and sustainable?
Yeah, well, as I said at the outset, AI is the zeitgeist at the moment, and quantum potentially the next big thing. And these are high energy consumption technologies, can't get away from it. So it's a case of looking at a number of issues that as the technology develops, they are reducing and looking to reduce their energy consumption. The latest AI models are on slightly reduced systems, and the large language models that have so much data in them, it's a case of actually turning those into patterns and model weights rather than retaining the pure data, and that reduces the size and the energy consumption of those AI models. But they can also look to see how they might offset their carbon use and their energy use, and you see that with a number of businesses, whether it's by commitments to planting trees or payments to other companies who are green and sustainable. That's one way to offset their usage, but also they can look at ways and means to make their use itself sustainable. So you can seek sustainable energy sources and look to purchase sustainable energy from the grid rather than taking it from fossil fuels. You can also utilise the output. So most of these high energy consuming businesses have huge heat energy being produced, and that can be captured and reused. So you see businesses, again data centres in particular, being set up in places where the heat can be used, such as underneath swimming pools used to heat the swimming pool. So tricks like that can actually turn these high energy consuming businesses into sustainable tech and tech for good themselves. So that I think is one way that these AI businesses can show themselves to be sustainable. And what's more, the AI and the quantum computing may themselves find the solutions. They may well be the tools to get us to a sustainable future.
That's really interesting. It sounded like there's a lot of ways that businesses can work in a sustainable and green way. What other challenges do you think face AI businesses now and in the future?
It's obviously a huge market growth and there's a significant amount of investment in AI. So at the moment it seems like the world is their oyster, but there are lots of issues for them and lots of things for them to deal with, and to a certain extent it's catching up with them. There's the first question of whether the bubble will burst on investment, although at the moment it looks like there's no chance of that slowing down straight away. But also you've got the regulation issues. I mentioned earlier that you've got UK acts, you've got the European acts, which actually is being watered down, but you've got this kind of drive between favouring the tech businesses to encourage growth, but also needing to protect consumers and also to protect rights owners that AI might be utilising. So I think the key issue is making sure that your AI models are compliant with the regulations, and there's hardcore restrictions as to what you can and can't do with automated AI, but also from an IP point of view, it's ensuring that you are on the right side of the law, and in particular there's a lot of case law about copyright infringement, and so with AI models you've got a number of aspects where IP is a key concern. So training your models, you tend to use copyright materials to do so, and that is likely to be considered a copyright infringement, whether or not there's an exception on the basis of data scraping for research purposes. It looks to me like the courts are moving towards saying that training your AI models on copyright materials will be an infringement. So you need licensing rights in order to do that. So, and we're seeing that happen now with the likes of Universal doing deals for their music back catalogues with AI companies to license their music into those companies to allow them to produce AI content. And I expect we'll see that growing a lot as well. There's key cases about whether the AI models themselves can be a copyright infringement. So there was a case in the UK very recently, Getty Images versus Stability AI, where the court held that the models weren't themselves infringing copy because they didn't retain a genuine reproduction of the copyright work. They just contained kind of number patterns that were produced by algorithms for the AI model. But equally, there's been a case in Germany where a similar AI model, which is trained on data and then converts it into number patterns and model weights, it was held to be an infringing work. Now, the difference between those two cases, other than one being text-based and one being image-based, was what's called memorizations. So the memorizations of the AI model in the German case were remembering full-scale song lyrics and reproducing them in their entirety, and so that was deemed to be an infringement, that it was able to reproduce them so succinctly. In the UK case, in Getty, there was no evidence of any substantial copies in the reproductions or the memorizations of the model weights, and so the AI model itself wasn't considered to be a copy. And then the third issue is the outputs themselves, and if the outputs themselves are too similar to existing rights, then they've got a copyright issue there as well. So that's one huge issue for AI businesses to bear in mind, that there's a big potential for copyright infringement, and that licensing models are almost certainly going to be the way forward for that. And then finally on IP, it's about ensuring ownership of the content that's created by AI, and there's two issues on that. If AI is generating your content or generating your ideas, can you rightfully own that? And there's a question there as to who's putting in the prompts. Is it the person that puts in the prompts or writing the software that is the owner and the creator of that IP? But also with registered rights such as patent rights, there's case law ongoing at the moment to determine whether or not an invention created by AI is patentable, but B, an invention that involves AI, whether that's patentable, because there are exceptions to patentability for things such as computer programs per se, or mathematical models, and some of the patent offices are arguing that that's what AI inventions are all about. So AI business owners need to prove that their AI models have a technical contribution, and that is what would get them patent protection, will allow them to have more value in their businesses, and again to attract that additional investment. So I think there's a whole range of issues that the AI businesses have to face, albeit at the moment they're not necessarily being clamped down on, and the investment is still very strong.
So from everything that we've been talking about, it sounds like there's loads to go at in this area, in the sector, with these businesses. What do you think the next steps are?
Well, with all these opportunities and challenges, the Brabner's technology sector is perfectly placed with our specialisms in emerging tech and tech for good to help support, guide and advise businesses through all these issues. But more importantly, through our networks. We want to hear from these businesses to see how they're navigating these challenges and how they're making the most of these opportunities and thriving to drive innovation in the sector.
It's been great speaking to you about this today. I'm really excited to see what the future holds.
Yeah, thanks for speaking to me, Ruth. I'm looking forward to seeing how sustainable tech businesses and AI businesses grow together to solve the problems for the future.